So, wow. Skip Pritchard, he's something. Man, that was impressive. Only he told me that on account of me coming here, they would have redecorated the room completely with chandeliers and everything. So I don't know how much you can trust him, but still, that was impressive. And really, a lot of truth came along to it. So today, I'm going to talk a little bit about these issues here, a little bit about the place that we built in Aarhus, Denmark, something about user involvement, a little bit about the space of the library, something about play, early literacy in the library, maker culture, and then sort of the development of smart cities and what kind of roles the libraries could play in that. So I'm going to show you a lot of images, a lot of slides. And when I say a lot of slides, I really mean it, and I feel the energy sort of leaving the room now, because many slides is not good. But let's see. I was also asked to pronounce my name in Danish. My name is Rolf Hapel. Rolf, kind of like in between a cough and a bark. Rolf, kind of. That's my first name. Okay, so let's get into it. So this library here is actually the biggest construction in the city of Aarhus history. An enormous project, not only a library, but also a kind of securing the city for flooding. So it's built on an elevated area that would protect the city from sea rise up to 2.5 meters. There's installed all kinds of devices that would pump out. There's a river running next to the library that would sort of pump out the river water to the harbor and a blockade will go up in the stream and what have you. So this is an enormous project. Actually, a lot of projects compiled into one. And I had the great pleasure and the hair-pulling exercise of being head of the sort of planning of this. I lost all my hair in that period of time. So just to mention the economy, actually the total project, about 320 million US dollars. And financing came from 1/3 from a big foundation in Denmark. Then we sold the old main library and we rented out some of the space in the new place. Got some money from the municipalities for projects that should have been done anyway, reconfiguring the harbor site, etc. And some more money from foundations to special things in the library. So altogether, 320 million financed. And it actually kept within the boundaries of the budget, which is very unusual for public buildings, I can tell you. So it's much bigger than the old library. It's a very special place for kids and their families. A lot of technology embedded in the building, very many new services, and of course some increased opening hours. Just to give you an idea of how long does a thing like that take, I was head of a committee in 1998 determining where could we actually put a new main library in Aarhus city. And then it took 5 years for the city to agree on a kind of investment plan. And then we had the competition in 2007, and it was won in 2009. We started the groundbreaking 2011, and it opened in 2015. 17 years of not only my life, but everyone's life in that period of time. That was interesting. Also because in 1998, when we started, that was when Google came along. Around the time the city council decided to say, okay, we'll put some money into this, that was when Facebook came. 2007, around when the competition came, that was when we got our smartphones. So in that period of time, everything changed. And plan a library in that kind of changing period was extremely interesting. One principle that we took from that is always make decisions in the last responsible minute, because everything changes. So decision making, you need to be informed. Don't make decisions too early. So here's sort of the sketch of what the library would look like, smack in the middle, where the Vikings actually sailed up that little stream to their shipyards. So this is a very sort of historical, important place, and a very symbolic place in the city of Aarhus. So placing sort of a knowledge, memory, innovation institution smack in the middle of the most prominent place, that was a recognition of the value of the libraries. So also a light rail is running under the building. This is kind of the city plan. You have the city on the left-hand side and the harbor, and the idea was to bring people down to the harbor. Like any other city, the harbor, all the functionalities of the harbors were changing in Aarhus, and so it was kind of being desolate. So we wanted to bring people down to the harbor side. And there's nothing better than a library for that. This is just the size of the libraries. Over here you have, this is the Lido and the St. Marcus Square in Venice, and our project is about the same size of that. These others are from Copenhagen and Oslo in Norway. The architectural idea, 9 big columns and a smack roof down on that, a kind of an open city plaza just covered. That was the vision, so it should be a place that people would sort of stroll into without any hindrance. There you go again. This is how it looked. You see the harbor area is very industrial, kind of rough, edgy. And that is also the building from the outside. So we wanted to create a building that was kind of emulating that kind of roughness, that kind of chic industrialism on the outside, but on the inside be very human accommodating. This is how it looked just before it opened. You see the light rail running under it. And this is how it looked in the week after it opened. It was kind of beaming 24/7 all through the week, mainly because we couldn't find out how to close the light. It was so advanced that our janitors, we don't know. So it took a while, and luckily we have solar panels on top of the house, so that would provide most of the electricity. So, but why? Why build a building? Why build a physical big library when you got most of the information you need in your pocket? That was a big question. So let's go into that. This is the question we have to be able to answer as library professional. What are the problems in society that we need to be able to answer? So we have a big tradition. When we were in the industrial age, the physical artifacts of books containing information was what we actually distributed, and we were really good at optimizing on that. We were about democracy, education, culture. And in the Scandinavian countries, at least, we had about 60 to 70% of the population as users. So what has changed? Well, more and more urbanity. In Denmark, it's actually one of the countries in the world where the move from rural areas to cities has been the biggest. So everyone in Denmark almost live in cities now. So we need to think of what kind of structures do we need in cities to accommodate that kind of thing. Think libraries all the time. That is happening everywhere, including here or anywhere else. We have our information more and more mobile, accessible. That's also important. In the Scandinavian countries, we've had a lot of change over the recent years in the way that we get new citizens, refugees, immigrants. And then we have the fact that people are we don't want to die, and we are getting sort of more fit in the ages, only not everyone is that. So these demographic changes are also something that we need to consider in the libraries. Where I come from, they are now in the age group between 18 and 20 years old. There are 30% fewer young people than when I was a young man. So we have a crazy demography sort of tree, very, very many from the baby boomer generations that I belong to. And of course, we also have some social issues. We have the fact that managing information is actually more and more important. And there are quite a number of people who are not able to do so for various reasons. So maybe the gap between those who can do that and those who can't is actually increasing. In Denmark, we are now about 60% fewer physical libraries than when I was a young librarian. There were about 1,200 entities, and now we're down to 420 something. So that is a great structural change. It is the very smallest branches that has gone away, but still, this is a development. Then we have the challenge of the money. So we are in Denmark, Norway, Sweden, public sector libraries, we are in a fight of the money. It's a permanent crisis in the public sector, and we have to fight for every buck we will have in our budget. And the reality is that we don't get any more money, we'll probably get less in the future. So there is a strong demand for change, you could say. Some would maybe have seen this before. This is an old one, the extinction timeline, kind of in between a joke and some reality to it. Which services will be obsolete due to digital development. And this predicted years ago that the public libraries as we know them will be gone by 2020. So that's a big question. Are we here sort of just before the bell rings and we're out? Or do we have to reinvent the library? And we have, of course, chosen the path of the reinvention, new ways of being professional, new products, new alliances, new ways of funding. So I'll just go on to the user involvement thing. The traditional citizens engagement were kind of duty-driven, not very interesting. I'm a civil servant. I've been working in the sector many years. I've been to so many meetings where the citizens were asked to give their opinion, and we were citizens, servants and politicians sitting there, and 3 people would show up and they would kind of, Or it could be quite the opposite, where there was a big angry crowd that was already agitated because of some decisions that the politicians had made or the city servants had made. So it was not very constructive, but it applied to democracy. But that has changed. That has changed. There's now a lot of citizen cooperation, user-driven innovation has sort of caught on, also in the municipal areas, certainly in the libraries, co-production, co-creation. This is the ladder of citizen engagement that Sherry Arnstein made in 1969, American sociologist, I think she was. She's dead now. Where she said, in the bottom, it's pure manipulation. Every decision is already made, so it's not. Maybe it's therapy. People can let out steam and anger, and then they'll hopefully feel better, but we won't kind of listen to them. We were here, where I come from, we did inform, and to a certain degree consulted the citizens. But now we are moving up to where we actually delegate power from the municipality to the citizens. So citizen budgeting is one of the things. Citizens' ideations and voting on their own ideas for development in the municipality is actually happening. So we are forming partnerships with the citizens in a different way. And this is all the formats that can take place in that kind of engagement thing. Meetings, workshops, idea pitching, focus groups, a traditional sort of marketing tool, World Cafe, much more ideation-oriented, vision creating, phototyping, which is a format that is really interesting to engage citizens in taking photos from the library and commenting and discussing and what is good and bad. We used it very much when we were moving from the old library to the new one. Village Square format, where we sort of discuss ideas and projects with the citizens. This is a format, lead users, where we actually hired students from the university, gave them a 6-hour per week contract, and the ones that we hired were one who was good at social media, one who was strong in literature, one who was good in search engines, etc. And we formed a team of these mind spotters, as we call them. We built a universe around it. You see the caravan. We sent them out together with our librarians to cityscapes around, schools, etc. That gave a total different perception of what a library is, and it also brought in a lot of the network that these young people represented. There's some of them. User-driven design, different ways of engaging with citizens in creating our services, and building the future library. This was from 2007, where we asked kids to work in summer school to build their vision of what the new main library should be. And we documented it. You see the guy sitting on the left-hand side, he's documenting what the kid is actually building and saying, and we put it into the architectural competition, so the architects had to relate to what the kids had said about this place. And in the beginning, the architects, they were kind of not only skeptical, they were just ignoring it. But no, you have to address what the kids had said. That was really something. There we are with the kids. And that girl, in particular, she was saying she wanted to hear birds singing in the library. And in the beginning, we were kind of, well. And then eventually, we found out we could install these soundscapes in the libraries that could actually make birds singing. Some of you have been in airports, maybe in Amsterdam, where you can hear, the birds singing and so on. So we have that kind of soundscape now. And that was an idea from this girl. So we had the citizens engage in creating the vision for this library. This vision was actually formulated way before the architectural competition. It should be a space for human development and interaction, promoting experience, learning, innovation, perception, contemplation, inspiration through a flexible and programmable building with special focus on children and families. That was the vision of the place. Note, there's not a word about books, not a word about technology. So why? Because libraries are not about the tools, the means. They are about the end. And that is sort of enormously important to remember. Also thinking about the building. So what does it have to accommodate? We know that technology will change. We don't know what it'll look like in 15 years' time, actually. We don't know if there will be books in 30 years' time. We think there will be, but we're not sure. But we know that this building is going to stand for at least 100 years. So what is the common denominator for the building? That it is a building for human beings. And our needs doesn't change over, 50, 100 years. It's this kind of same basic needs we have. We want heat, good views, security, nice place to dwell, that kind of thing. So we can furnish the building with all kinds of technologies, but the basics, the good acoustics, all these things need to be a part of the building. And that was the important thing to keep in mind. And then the purpose as stated here. So we have been working a lot with partnerships, and this is a mental model that we work with on the library idea. So we call it the mash-up library. Actually, it is a really good idea we stole from UK many years ago, and we have been working and developing on it ever since. The mash-up library. The mash-up, when you build a homepage, a website, you often do a mash-up. That means that you bring in resources into the website that somebody else will maintain. So you bring in the weather forecast, the TV program, whatever you can find, and use technologies to stuff it into your own website. So we took that idea and brought it back to the physical arena. So we bring in all kinds of services that someone else maintain, as long as they fit in with the overall purpose of the library, which would be kind of lifelong learning, citizen engagement, etc. So we have partner activities running in the library. And the beauty of that model is that we provide the space, we provide the marketing, we put it in the program, we advertise on social media, and then our partners will bring in the content. They will engage the citizens in different formats, and we will support it. We will facilitate it. That is a way of creating much more value for less money. So what we get from this is we get much more resources in the libraries, we get much bigger network, we get more diversity and even quality in our services, and we get a lot of new ambassadors. We have built this strategic tools for strategic library development. You can find it on the internet. That gives a lot of recommendations on that building partnership, which for us is one of the greatest strategical moves that we have done. Now we have more than 130 partnerships. You know, it's a one-pager. We will provide this, you'll do that. On that we agree, and that's kind of it. One of the examples is that one of our children librarians made an agreement with a guy who run an NGO for kids, and they cooked up a program of 100 children days on Dock 1 that ran for a year. 100 activities that actually ran for a year. No cost for the library, and the NGOs got exposed and so on. That was great. And that means that we have a very strong program. This is just 1 week, 42 activities, mostly done in partnerships at Dock 1. So, a little bit about the space. We've heard all the game-changing things. By the way, I am really personally in a kind of change situation. I have been living in Denmark for most of my life. Now I'm here for 2 years, have to speak a different language, have to learn a lot of new things I have to teach. I've never taught before, you know, so I'm really out of my comfort zone over here. But I mean, you have to do something just to keep your brain running. So the library as a space, why? This is interesting. So we have to move the thinking from information to what can only be experienced in the physical library. See the space as a medium rather than a space for media. What can experience on-site. Information and data in itself is not that interesting. What is interesting is to put it into context. That is what gives it meaning, significance. That is what you can do in the physical place. And you know that the libraries are extremely generally credible and has a really high sort of profile in the you know, the trust area. I don't know really why. I remember when I was a young librarian, we did this study of reference answers. And it turned out that about 50% of the reference answers were actually correct. The rest was not. But it didn't really matter because we were kind of trustworthy, which is interesting. So meeting people, not meeting information. Experimenting. See the visitor not as somebody who uses our resources, but somebody who comes in with a brain and something to offer, to share. Think about the values that we were talking about, Skip. About a little bit of humor and whatever can happen. So what is going on in the physical library? Yeah, all kinds of things are going on in the physical libraries. Hotshot giving these open lectures. Actually, that's physical space that you see here is actually, we call it the ramp, which is kind of 5 levels that we had to build because when you have to ascend from one place to another in the building, there have to be a staircase, although we have elevators, and there have to be a wheelchair ramp. And not to have too steep a wheelchair ramp, we had to make that room very wide. And that was a challenge to ourselves to get these 5 podiums. So the architects, they wanted to put shelves on that. They called it the media ramp. We said, no way, this is a beautiful open space. We need to do something with it. So that was a tripping of ourselves to find out what that would be. And that has been fantastic, the things that we can do there. There you see it again, Children's Literature Festival. On that ramp, it can do everything. Everything is happening in the open place. We don't confine it to a closed space. Everyone who is using the library can see what is going on. And this is another place in the library, also very sort of diverse and you can do all kinds of things in the library. So open spaces are important in the libraries, to have lectures in them. This is the cafe. So we need to have social spaces and communal spaces. That one has crashed, the one on the left-hand side. I'll show you this one instead. You see, there you see actually communal as social in the same place. The guys on the left-hand side, they're talking and engaging. And on the other hand, you see the communal space where people are just sitting next to each other, but sort of immersed in their own activity. But this is also the ramp. So that place can take all kinds of functionality. We also have between the shelves places where people can dwell. And of course, a lot of different technologies that people can engage with in the physical places. Interactive tables, etc. That's a funny kind of thing where you can engage with the screen and have all kinds of suggestions for books and readings and so on. So, play and early literacy is important in the libraries in our view. This is James Heckman, Nobel Prize winner, economics, kind of a notability in that. He says, invest in early childhood development. That's good for the economy, if not anything else. It's probably also good for the life of people. But there you go. So you have all kinds of rationality for creating that kind of sense. So it's about reading together. It's about these things. It's about inspiration in the library. That's also a kind of reading. And of course, children's theater, about language. This is a kind of gaming activity, actually. We developed that floor together with the University of Aarhus, and there was this branching out of a company that now sells these floors. It has about 15, 16 different games on them. So they're physical sort of entities. That is our gaming alley that you see here. But also all kinds of info activities. More gaming and all the old school games where we sometimes have to kick off the adult people so the kids can have some place to run. We run gaming, learning, lecture kind of things. This guy who's sitting here is a librarian, very much into gaming, and he teaches the kids how to build their own games. But of course the board games, there you go, and the chess. That lost a little bit of its magic because of artificial intelligence. When Deep Blue, actually it wasn't Garry Kasparov that was the first grandmaster to lose. It was the Danish grandmaster, Bent Larsen, who lost first time to a Deep Blue IBM thing, which was kind of heartbreaking, I think. But there you go. Cardboard Knights, they work with laser cutters and build these things. Creative play in the library. All kinds of creations, and of course Lego. We are in Denmark, so there you go. This is our playground outside the library. You see the Chinese dragon and the Russian bear on the east side of the building. You see the African savanna on the south side, the American eagle on the west side, and the Icelandic volcano also.
Play is one of the most important ways for our children to express themselves culturally and to create their cultural identities as children. Families at Play in the Library has worked with bringing play into the physical library and especially with how the whole family can be inspired to play together. This film presents the project's most important lessons learned. Media and toys play an essential role in children's socialization, and therefore games and playware are a necessary and important part of the library's activities. Create playrooms or areas that appeal and inspire to play. Too staged in rigorous environments can be intimidating to the users. An environment with many possibilities to play, which appeals to both the senses and physical activities, work better than structured play that needs introductions to the rules. Families start playing much easier when they immediately see the possibilities of play. Parents often bring their children to the library with the purpose of reading or borrowing media. It is important to inform parents that play culture is part of the library service. A way to involve the parents is to appeal to their inner child and to make it clear that playing is both allowed and encouraged at the library.
It's a good thing for families to play together. When families play, adults and children have different competencies that they can use together in the purpose of playing. Parents know something about playing, and children know something else about playing.
The librarian's best role is as observer or equal participant in the games. We must show that playing has a place at the library through our attitude and behavior. Saying yes to play is to say yes to noise and clutter. Colleagues, management, and users in the library must accept that play creates more noise and clutter. Working with families at play in the library is about showing the library not as a repository for the modern family, but as a place for experiences and adventures.
So that project informed us a lot and showed us that we shouldn't build a children's library. We made a place for family and children. That is a big distinction, actually. So the maker culture and co-creation, which is a big thing, and that we adapted in Scandinavia from US, has been a real game changer too. Just to give you an idea of a mental model that we have used to think about this place is that it's a 4 spaces model that the library school in Denmark developed at a time. Libraries are inspiration spaces. You know, the serendipity thing, when you exhibit the books, etc., something resonates in you. They are learning spaces. They are places for where all kinds of learning takes place, some from media, some from engaging with other users of the library. And they are meeting spaces, places where you can exercise your democratic rights to create all kinds of meetings that we lend our spaces for that kind of meeting in the libraries. All of these 3 activities are really sort of well known and historically has always been connected to the public library. The new is the performative space, where if you're thinking Maslow, it'll be on top of the pyramid. That is where you sort of realize yourself. That is where you create and co-create. That is where something new is happening. So this is how it looked, the performative space, all kinds of performances, gaming going on, hacker labs, people's lab, idea pitching. And you see these places are really important, not only for guys, young guys who think everything is about technology, but actually for very mature people also, and their kids and grandchildren. This is a volunteer from one of our partners, an NGO called Open Spaces. He's a tech student, and he comes in and helps us with these things. This is the Tweens Lab at Doggen, where we can do more messy and noisy things. And we make these mini maker fairs. And of course, this is very much about design thinking and creating the mindset also in the population. So design thinking is not only for the librarians, it's for the general public, and we can make services out of it. You know that design thinking for library toolkit that you can download. Brian Bannon, who will speak tomorrow, is sort of one of the really strong drivers of that. So, last thing, smart cities, happening all over Europe, in Asia, not that much over here, but still, it is happening. You know, all the sensors that are embedded everywhere, all the Internet of Things are communicating with each other, enormous amounts of big data is created on top of all that sensor data. So where is the libraries in that? You know, there's no accepted general definition, but it is about Internet of Things, 5G transmission, that'll be here in a second, about how you can move smart in the cities, etc. And now Aarhus is one of the leaders in Europe on this. I like this quotation about smart cities, because that is where the libraries come in. urban performance depends not only on the city's hard infrastructure, physical capital, but also, and increasingly so, on the availability and quality of knowledge, communication, and social infrastructure, human and social capital. That is really important to bear in mind. So what we do in the library, we create these events. We call them open days, and in this instance, it was open cultural days, where we invited young developers to come to the library for a weekend to work on the big data that the city had created, especially on culture data. So we invited mentors. We had prizes for the winners. They would work on creating some kind of service on top of these data. And they worked tremendously hard over the weekend. And these guys, they won. They built an app on top of data that volunteers from the city archives had put into the open data platform. And that app was actually sold later on. The prize these guys got was a full day with an accountant and a solicitor to make their own company. And they did. So we work a lot with the startups in the library of the city. This open tourism days where we invite developers. We create design thinking camps. And the Aarhus Service Jam where we had the general people from all over the city to work on new public services and design think them. We do the Internet Week Denmark Festival, a lot of events, mainly happening on Dock 1. So we have placed the library sort of smack in the middle of that kind of development. And the startups, they will always be interested in working with the libraries. They understand the general values of libraries. And they are eager to be part of a development of the libraries, I can tell you. We are now creating a Aarhus City Lab, which is just next to the library at the harbor front, which is totally immersed in technologies and where we have an enormous screen set up that will show the city data as they are generated in real time. Digital citizen involvement, we are now building a service where people can actually digitally engage in the city development. And this is how it looks when it's sort of taken to the library. This is Maker Fairs. You see the 3D printers and stuff. We create events around that. We don't just put up a 3D printer and then leave it be. We take it down into the basement and take it up when we have an event on it. We have several of those. You see, it's very important and very popular. This is a drone workshop. You see the girl, she's flying a drone actually there. So we educate the kids and they have fun doing so. We are the place of Coding Pirates, which is a national program of coding for kids. Of course, Lego Mindstorm and all kinds of activities. This is our newest employee, the robot Norma. She now speaks fluently Danish. She started out with English, and we have trained her, and now she's doing storytelling, for instance, for the kids, and they kind of find it amusing. This is our shelving bot prototype kind of thing. We're working on it. So what is happening behind the scene? We have this self-service returns thing. Main library, we have 18 branches. This is how it looks underneath. So totally, we have a floating book collection. Some will find that interesting, and we sort from all back deliveries from the branches. Each branch has its profile. So we set up a profile for a branch. The library people working there would set up the profile. So the system knows when there are no more gardening books in this facility. So the system will automatically check gardening books out and have them sent to that branch. There you see. So what are the competencies that are needed among staff? They have to be a little bit of teachers, tutors, facilitators, project leaders, developer, actually design thinkers, and of course, still professional hosts with a very service-oriented mindset. So just to wrap up, what did that mean for the library to change that? So now we have about 1.3 million physical visits to the library per year, which is almost 3 times as much as we had in the old main library. although the old main library was the most used cultural institution in the city. So now it's totally crazy. So that is really what happens when you engage with the citizens. I like this quotation from a Norwegian library researcher. Libraries are low-intensive meeting places and creators of social capital and trust, meaning that this is where you see the otherness of others. All kinds of people come into the library. Normally, we are segregated more and more into our own sort of enclaves. I live in a place where people are kind of like me, and there are some other places in Aarhus that are very different. But we all go to the library, and we see that each other are not a menace or a threat. So that's a low intensity. But we are also high-intensive meeting places, and we can be even more. I'll end with an ad for the next library conferences, which is an invention from Aarhus. The next library conferences are really sort of where you bring on sort of the newest things that are going on in the libraries. And it has just been held in Berlin and is going back to Aarhus next year. So I hope that some of you will be able to come. Then you can also see Doc 1. Thank you for not dropping to sleep.